And welcome to The Factor Uncensored. Thank you for joining us tonight. Now, a legal showdown between the White House and a federal judge is brewing. This comes as the Justice Department resists the judge's demand for more information about flights that took deportees to El Salvador. Now, the government argues that the court should end its so-called continued intrusions into the authority of the executive branch. Previously, U.S. District Judge James Boasberg temporarily blocked deportations under an 18th century wartime declaration that the Trump administration used. Now, President Trump has since called for the judge's impeachment after a series of court setbacks over his executive actions. Now, that led to Supreme Court Justice John Roberts issuing a rare rebuke of the president's comments. Joining us to talk about this tonight, Dr. Dietrich von Biedenfeld from Houston Community College and Dr. David Branham from the University of Houston downtown. Welcome both of you to The Factor Uncensored. Are we gearing up for a constitutional challenge here? For those who don't know what that is and how important it is, please tell us about it, Dr. Branham.
Well, this goes back into the 1800s. The Constitution doesn't actually give the judiciary the judicial review. That was something the judiciary gave itself. That was a power they gave itself in 1803 in Marbury versus Madison. And since that time, there's been an issue when the judiciary makes their rulings on the president has to actually execute those rulings. And it's up to the president to do that. Through history, the judiciary has been very kind of laid back on their rulings whenever there's a political question because they fear the president will just ignore it. You might remember the ruling on prayer in schools. Did you ever see a president send the National Guard down to arrest a principal because somebody was praying in their school? No. So it's difficult for the judiciary to make rulings and then expect sometimes that the president will actually execute those rulings when the president doesn't want them. And so this is the case in this case where this judge wanted the president to turn the planes around in midair and come back, and Trump is basically saying this is something that's out of bounds for you. And so now we do have this constitutional crisis. Does the judiciary actually interpret the Constitution? Is the president going to actually execute the rulings of those judges, or is there going to be some just ignoring those rulings? And it's something that's very important.
And of course, we had the border czar Tom Homan say that we're not going to do what the judges say. We don't care what the judges say. We're going to do what we're going to do. To hear that from his administration, the president's administration, challenging a judge. Your thoughts on that, Dr. von Biedenfeld?
This is very dangerous for the rule of law, particularly because we go back to 2017 with the pardoning of Sheriff Arpaio and that criminal contempt charge from an Article III branch. So basically, in 2017, President Trump already set the stage to say Article 2 is vastly superior to Article 3. Unlike other countries, we don't have a judicial police force. U.S. Marshals, who answer to the president, are in charge of federal judicial security. We've already seen the USIP ruling where the judge said, essentially to Dr. Brandon's point, we're not really getting in this. We don't like that armed security were used to remove you, but we're not stepping in. The Kennedy Board Center, all of these removals, judges are very hesitant because other than their robes and the weight of public opinion, which decidedly moved in President Trump's favor during the election, they don't have a lot of authority. They don't have the power of the purse, and we've seen Congress is a bit inept in reining that in. You've got these members of Congress who are very hesitant to deny funding. And so the president is using a very pragmatic shotgun approach to try to find friendly judges where he can, in Florida, some of his own appointees to rule in certain areas. And this pardon power means that if the border czar is convicted of some criminal contempt, President Trump can simply pardon him, thereby eviscerating any sort of actual penalty for disobeying the judge's order.
Are we on a dangerous path here, Dr.?
We very well could be on a dangerous path, but I would say this is not unprecedented. We've seen this type of behavior before. We've seen the courts, before the Warren Court, the courts are very leery about answering any kind of a political question with a ruling. After the Warren Court, we saw the Supreme Court get more brave on this. And the presidents over time have went ahead and went along with it. The most famous one is Al Gore. When the Supreme Court said, I'm sorry, Al Gore, you lost the election, he said, yes, that's fine, let's go forward. And so unless we have that, then the judiciary really they're basically taking the power away from the judiciary. But I think this is the biggest problem here is that you have one district judge making these rulings, and there's a constitutional flaw here in Article 3, where I think the Supreme Court should have original jurisdiction on these executive orders. Instead, you have one person making a ruling and expecting the planes to turn around in the air because he said it out loud. And this is something that presidents have often had a problem with, and we have a president now who's willing to do something about it.
All right, and your thoughts about the path that we're on as a country if the president continues down the path that he's on?
Well, we've seen this precedent in many other countries. I've cited Pakistan before on your show, where we've talked about the lawyers and judges protesting, but they're not as we in the United States would say, the Second Amendment class. So one of the challenges Gore might have had in trying to establish some sort of revolution is the same problem that Imran Khan faces in Pakistan, which is you can protest, but the people with the guns are going to put you in jail. And so the actual enforcement, that Article 2 branch, has the guns, it has the missiles, it has all of the jails, and so that authority really does create fear. And so when you've got people, including people that are arguably by precedent allowed in the country being detained by ICE at airports and things of that nature without any due process, and judges offering rulings and lawyers saying, what are you going to do about it? That is a very problematic situation.
Mm-hmm. All right, we want to thank you guys, and don't go anywhere. Hear more Factor on the way here on the Factor Uncensored. And welcome back. After 60 years, the federal government no longer explicitly bans contractors from having segregated restaurants, waiting rooms, restrooms, and drinking fountains. NPR reports part of a memo released last month outlines changes in light of the Trump administration's efforts to end diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI. The memo also addresses gender identity. Former President Lyndon B. Johnson signed the executive order back in 1965. Stating law, federal laws will make segregation and discrimination illegal. Our guests are back to talk about it. Glad to have you here on the Factor Uncensored. So when you hear about this action, and many people are suggesting this being pulled out was the result of a gender issue. But also in there, we're talking about race as well. So your thoughts on this, Dr.
Yeah, it doesn't
Branham?
surprise me that it's a gender issue, especially when the president's talked so much about men and women's sports and that perspective. So it doesn't surprise me that it comes from there. And there's irony here that DEI, the people who are against DEI say they're against it because of segregation, for one thing. Mm-hmm. So they're basically saying we're being separated due to race, and now this order is actually reversing that. So the good thing is that there are still federal laws and state laws that says you can't have segregated restaurants. You can't have segregation in your society. So that protection isn't gone. It's just a message that a lot of people are taking from this ruling that the president isn't interested in having a lack of segregation in the country.
All right. Dr. Von Biedenfeld, your thoughts on this?
Again, this is somewhat problematic in the sense that while there are laws barring these discriminatory practices, the threshold to reach those is different than it would be for a breach of contract claim. So by removing certain provisions, if a contractor was found in breach, the easy route of asking a federal agency to withdraw or cancel a contract based on breach is now taken to another level of proving with much higher thresholds for demonstrating a protected class, and other availing yourself of those protections now becomes more challenging for anyone who is claiming a discrimination.
When we talk about the Justice Department, and many minority organizations turn to the Justice Department to investigate discrimination, do you think this Justice Department of the Trump administration would be receptive to investigating the claims that may be out there? Either it's as a result of disability, race, sex. Your thoughts? Do we still have a Justice Department willing to look into these issues in America?
Well, if you ask Attorney General Pam Bondi, we do. I mean, she will tell you straight out that she is going to enforce the law on these issues. But for a lot of people, the trust isn't there. So we're going to have to wait and see. And she's going to have to prove herself on this. It's going to have to be more than words. So as time goes on, there'll be a microscope on her to see whether she's doing it or not. And then the backlash will occur if there's a perception that she's not doing it.
And if people don't trust this Justice Department, like Dr. Branham said, are they less willing to go to it and just endure the discrimination, whatever it may be here in this country now?
Well, as we look at challenges of stagflation, mass layoffs, and then that ripple effect of federal employees, again, I mentioned before some of the charitable organizations that have had to have layoffs due to federal grant stoppages. That trickles around to those local restaurants and those other businesses that those individuals frequent. You don't have to go to the dry cleaner if you don't have to go to work and put on a suit. And so I think people are going to become more timid, and this is a culture that will embolden the Article 2 branch powers. And while we have, of course, a legal mandate, those words mean nothing without staff. Many mass layoffs mean the already backlogged cases will not be addressed in a timely fashion. And so if you're out of a job based on discrimination, how long do you have to wait and be unfed and not be able to rely on federal programs that have been gutted to feed your family, right? If you don't have SNAP, if you don't have these things. So it does definitely build a more dependent culture on the federal government, even as we claim to want to reduce its influence.
All right, gentlemen, thank you for joining us here tonight on The Factor Uncensored. Always good to see you. Still